Hello everybody, this is Kyrix with another episode of This Week in Kyrix. This is being recorded on Tuesday, March 16th, 2021, for the day of Wednesday, March 17th, 2021. And real quick, we're going to get the actual week's events out of the way so that I can get on with the topic I really want to talk about. Unemployment has not been resolved yet, but the good news is I have had more contact with them, and they basically said if nothing's been resolved by Friday, get in contact with them again, and hopefully they can expedite this further. Allegedly tomorrow I should be receiving my stimulus check, so that'll open up a few things. Most notably, I will have my PlayStation VR. I'm getting a hold of Robert. I think he's off tomorrow, so he's going to get me up there to get that taken care of, maybe a couple other things as well. I have finally got a couple people to play Barotrauma with. It finally occurred to me to just find a Discord and find people there. It's not much. I'm signed up for a game that hasn't really timed yet, where I'm going to be playing the medical officer in a very big ship, which, let's be honest, most of my duties will consist of watering plants. And I have been running a small campaign on my own with a couple people, which has been going rather well, actually. We were doing okay, and then we got a mission to take out a crawler nest, which I didn't see any of. I stayed on the sub for that and sent 2 people out, and the rest of us kept the sub running. But before we did that actual mission, we happened completely by accident to stumble across something fun. One of my guys was on the guns. He's like, hey, there's some minerals on the wall. Should I go out and mine them? So I hit autopilot, because it's very difficult to manually maintain control, but the autopilot can manage it just fine. It's literally about the only thing the autopilot can manage on its own. But, so I sent him out there. He's mining it. I went out to help him? I don't remember. I think he got lost, or maybe I just wanted to check the sub. And as I'm out, I happened to notice, and I don't know how he didn't notice this, but we were parked on top of another sub, a wrecked sub. So I basically got the whole squad out for that. We basically parked the sub, shut the engines off, and went in, and like a couple of them were doing gun stuff. I was using the plasma cutter to cut a hole in. And we just looted the sub and came out with so much crap. Like, we single-handedly tripled our medical supplies. We quadrupled our coil gun ammo. Got some weapons, got some materials, got some fun shit. Scrapped a bunch, sold the rest, kept some, that kind of thing. It was just real good shit. So that's fun. I've also been playing single-player on it a little bit more. Okay, this is a story that deserves to be told. I have for the longest time been obsessed with the game Cooking Simulator. I've been watching lots of YouTubers and VTubers play it, and I want it. I think it was last month I finally bought it on Steam, even though I was sure my computer couldn't handle it. Spoiler alert, it can't. Not very well, at least. Like, it freezes on the opening menu. But I own it, so that whenever I get a more powerful computer, there it is with all the expansions. I've been wanting it for PlayStation, but it's not out. Well, yesterday I was doing something, because I had a little bit of money at the time, or no, I had the stimulus coming, so I'm like, let me do a little browsing, maybe something's on sale that I want to keep an eye out on. And I noticed, oh yeah, that's right, Overcooked was on sale. How much is Overcooked going for? Even though I already own Overcooked 2 twice. Once on the PS4 that I paid for. Or no, the PS4 Overcooked 2 I got from PlayStation Now. I own Overcooked 1 from PlayStation Plus. But I did pay for all the expansions. And I also own it on Steam because, fuck it was on sale. And there's no reason for me to also own it on the Switch, but I probably will buy it at some point just because. And, on a fucking whim, I typed into the search bar, simulator. First entry, Cooking Simulator. I'm like, oh my fucking god. Price, $1.99. It was a 90% off sale that ended that day. And for the trifecta, I had 500 points. Now, for those who don't own a Switch, Nintendo has a point system where if you buy something, I don't know what the exact ratio is, but when you spend money, you get a certain number of points, little gold token things. And each one of these tokens, each one of these points, is a penny. So you can put them towards things. Like I'll often like have them from buying a game. It's like, oh, you want to put this? And I'm like, oh yeah, take $1.17 off, etc. Well, I had about 500 and something points, so I just got the game for free. So I found it on sale and didn't have to pay for it. That's amazing. Now the downside is it's just base cooking sim, so there's no extra kitchen. No, I mean, like, no modern kitchen, no pizza thing, no bakery thing, etc. It's just base kitchen. And the part that pisses me off, no ladle. What kind of fucking Neanderthal takes a big-ass spaghetti pot and pours that into a bowl? No, that's what ladles are for. Anyway, so I own Cooking Simulator. I've also, when I had my tax money, bought all the expansions. Because originally I had bought the main expansion for Civ 6 on the Switch. Well, this time I went and bought the season pass for everything. So I now have every character and all the other things. So I've been watching Team 4-Star play it again. And I'm like, why don't I have secret societies and shit? Well, turns out they're in there. I just didn't buy that expansion. Well, now I own them. So I've been playing that, just enjoying it. I have done no work on Final Fantasy VII at all. I've only been, maintaining my dailies on Star Trek, waiting for that to fizzle out. Haven't really been recording much, but I have started a new segment. And I'm thinking of changing up the game at some point very soon. I'm considering doing... originally it was going to be Sims 4. I might do 7 Days to Die in creative mode with enemies turned off. But this segment will be called Let's Chill. And the whole point is just relaxing gameplay, relaxing commentary, in a calm tone of voice, etc. I won't say it's ASMR because I don't have the equipment for that, I don't know how that works, and I don't think I want to try that, but it's basically a huge departure from my usual content, like no coarse language, no negativity, just me just telling fun facts about things, talking about interesting things, and so on and so forth. But I'm thinking, like I said, 7 Days to Die is an option, Stardew Valley is an option. I don't know when I'm gonna do them. I have discovered that, like with This Week in Kyrix, I really have to record in advance, because I tried to do live commentary on The Sims 4, and that collapsed literally 2 seconds in. So that's not gonna happen. But like I said, tomorrow I should have my PlayStation VR and start doing shit with that. So I went over unemployment, Civ, Cooking Sim, Barotrauma. I spoiled myself a little bit. I went to Dunkin' Donuts the other day and bought a whole bunch of jelly donuts. For those that don't know, about the only donuts I really truly like, although I'll eat glazed, and I'll eat frosted donuts occasionally. I don't crave them like I used to as a child. But the donuts that I truly love are jelly donuts. The problem is nobody makes them. My choices are Dunkin' Donuts, which was expensive as balls, or Krispy Kreme, which glazes them, and I don't particularly care for that. But I had some money, so I went up to Dunkin' Donuts, bought a dozen, saw they had jelly munchkins, 10 for $2, and bought some of those too. So I came home with a bunch of jelly donuts, and basically ate nothing but that for a day, which of course did wonders for me. God, if I ever get rich, I need to pay someone whose sole job is to make me eat. Because I'll go the entire fucking day without eating, and it's worse if I have any kind of snack, because if I get too hungry, I'll eat that. And I do stress too hungry, like I have to be hungry for the better part of 3 hours before I'll get up off my ass and get into my snacks. That's how bad it is with me feeding myself. And the thing is, I'm not anorexic, I'm just a procrastinator, I just, for whatever reason, don't eat. you know. It probably does qualify as an eating disorder, but not quite to the same degree that, like, anorexia and bulimia are, where it's a vanity or a shame thing, where it's like, oh no, I look horrible, bleh, or don't eat, you know. It's just, I don't eat because, for some reason, my brain prioritizes everything except the thing that keeps me alive. Like, I'll get up and pee, but I won't fucking eat. I don't know. But, so yeah, jelly donuts. Now, here's the thing I actually want to talk about. I just kind of want to be nostalgic for a while. I was on my way home from an errand for the roommate a little bit ago, like 10-15 minutes ago, and I was thinking about, like, how I am around people when they get to know me, and how generally if I don't like you, you know immediately. And it reminded me of one of the HeroClix players, and I just want to talk about my HeroClix career, as it were. I started when the first set, Infinity Challenge, was out. I was hanging with a friend of mine back in my original neighborhood, the one I grew up in, although this is my second time living there. We had moved away for about a year and a half, and then moved back into a different apartment, but same complex. And one day he's like, hey, Kyrix, come over here. I want to show you this game. It's called HeroClix. It's superheroes. I'm like, I'm one of those people. I'm down to learn any game, generally. You give me a game, I'll at least attempt it. And he gave me, of course, some cast-offs. Notably, I had Professor X experienced, I believe. Bunch of thugs. No henchmen. Yeah, I think it was henchmen and thugs were Marvel, and street thugs or something like that were DC. But thugs were the melee, henchmen were the ranged, and I had none of the henchmen. I had a rookie Doctor Strange. I might have had a Wolverine early on. I had Blade, and I had a bunch of Skrulls, which back then they were just generics. They didn't have any of the good Skrulls. Like nowadays, there's some good Skrulls, but not back then. And of course, nobody had read the rulebook, and they'd only vaguely glanced over the power and ability cards, so things like flying was broken because they assumed that when they were soaring, which is a mode they used to have as flyers, the soaring people could hit grounded people, but grounded people couldn't hit soaring people. Turns out it's actually the other way around. Soaring people can only affect other soaring people, but grounded people can shoot soaring people at half range. So if I have a range of 10 and you're within 5 of me, I can shoot you while you're soaring. Anyway. And Range Combat Expert, we didn't realize didn't work with everything. And Close Combat Expert didn't exist at the time. We didn't know about objects, so Super Strength was just slept on. No one paid attention to Leap Climb. Outwit wasn't really a thing until DC, etc. So I had a couple figures, and I didn't really get a lot done. I was still learning, and I was learning poorly. But I remember one day, because it was very rare for me to get money back then, because my mother still had control of my check. I didn't realize I had a check. And as an adult in the past year, I have become increasingly aware of how exploited I was. And I love my mother, but I am beyond furious about this. That I was basically kept stunted so that she could keep collecting my check. And the worst part is I brought this up and the whole family's like, yeah, we yelled at her about that, so I was literally the only one not in on it. But anyway, I had been given money to get a booster pack. Boosters were 4 figures, just randomly assigned. And I pulled my first unique, because back then the rarities were rookie, veteran, experienced, and unique. Whereas now uniques are still a thing, or at least they were. But it's rare, or it's common, uncommon, rare, super rare, chase, you know, and like super chase or something like that, I believe, as well. And also limited editions. But I pulled unique Wolverine. And that same day, someone had seen one of the other guys' unique Wolverine and offered to trade him 2 uniques for it. And he's like, no, man. And then he saw me pull him and was like, hey, I'll trade you these. And for those who want to know, it was unique Juggernaut and unique Quasar. And I naturally made the trade. And they're like, really? You were going to make that trade? My friends, I'm like, was it a bad trade? They're like, no, I just thought you liked Wolverine. I'm like, yes, but now I have 2 uniques instead of 1. And they're like, well, I can't argue with that logic, you know. I never really found much success in the early days with HeroClix. I vaguely remember a couple of the people I gamed with back then. I remember 2 names, and sadly I can, but I'm not going to mention them. One we'll call, I'll call him Dugout, because he used to game at the Dugout, which is one of the places that I heard so much about and never went to. But he was a big collector, and he used to come over and game with us. Like, he had everything. And he was pretty good, and he actually factors into one more story that I'm going to tell. And the other guy was after, and we'll get to him later. But I remember one day we went over to somebody's house. I don't remember who it was. It might have been Dugout's house. To game. And my friend had recently come into 2 absurdly rare figures, one of which I own now. I didn't then, but I do now. Promo figures of Batman and Spider-Man. Now, the Spider-Man wasn't that big a deal. He was 1 point less at, I think, 110 point... No, he was 1 point more at 111 versus the usual 110. It was one or the other. The Veteran was 1 point, the Promo was another, and there was only 1 point difference between them. The stats were identical, but the Promo had double the range. Normal Spidey had a range of 4, Promo Spidey had a range of 8, and I am, for some reason, making the Spidey web shooter gesture with my right hand. I don't know why. Fun fact, I actually do that when I get up in the morning. I will stretch my hands out, do the Spidey thing, and then pull back on my arms like I'm physically hauling myself up. It's something I did once as a joke, and for some reason it fucking stuck. Almost everything I do started out as a joke at one point, and now it's just a part of who I am. Which, really, that's kind of the story of life. But anyway, Spidey didn't really do much, because back then we didn't know how broken Leap Climb really was. In-Cap was not as powerful as it is nowadays, and Stunning Blow didn't exist. And Spidey didn't have super senses until the next set, so all the things that made him really awesome weren't a thing yet. But what really caught our eye was Batman. Because Batman had 3 things that none of us could figure out. He had, first off, a Batman team symbol, and we didn't know what the Batman team ability was. We had to look it up. Turns out it's stealth, and back then, that blew our fucking mind. The idea that a figure would have stealth forever, and you couldn't do shit about it. You know? Well, sure enough, that's what it did, and he had Outwit as well. And, Batman is really the figure that broke Outwit. Because originally Black Panther did it to an extent, but he never had it the way Batman did. But anyway, the other things he had were, I think he had Smoke Cloud, but I know he had Willpower, and we had to look up what that was, and we were like, oh my god. Well, actually, no, we weren't too impressed, because none of us really played with the pushing rules at the time. That came later. We didn't realize it was optional, but back then, we didn't do the push-click damage for quite a while. But the idea that he didn't take push damage was a novelty to us. So anyway, we were aware of him for a while, and then the fateful day came when DC HeroClix officially launched with Hypertime. And naturally my friend was just hardcore. He's going to go to our gaming spot, which I can mention my name, Emerald City. We don't really game there anymore. I mean, I've gone once or twice, but it's not really a big deal to me anymore, you know? And, we went there for the release, and he bought a ton of boosters, and Dugout bought a ton of boosters, and everyone bought a ton of boosters. I bought anywhere from 1 to 3. I know I had 1, but I think I might have had more because I traded a couple figures to get Experienced Batman, a figure that, again, I own to this day. And he was a backbone of every team I built for years. I mean, even for the first year when I came back to HeroClix in Crisis, I was still putting him on teams until I finally got, I think it was Vet Robin from Crisis, who did everything Experienced Batman did better. He had better stats. He did everything Batman did, but he did it better. So, yeah. That's the figure that eventually replaced Experienced Batman, but Experienced Batman carried me through so many teams. But anyway, so we've got our figures, you know. I'm stuck with pretty much entirely Marvel HeroClix. I might have had Batman and maybe Aquaman on there. I know I pulled Aquaman, but I don't know if I kept him. That might have actually been where I got my Swamp Thing. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. Point is, I got Batman. That's the takeaway. So my friend and Dugout decide we're going to play a battle royale, the three of us. Them with their DC figs, me with my Marvel. And of course, I've got boring old Marvel figs. They're not even paying attention to me. They're just slamming each other in the middle of the map. And I'm at the margins just picking people off. And when the night finally ends and we all agree to go home, we tally up the points and find out that guess who won? Me. And of course they play it off, oh, well, you only won because we ignored you and we're really tired so we weren't on our game, but I whooped their ass. And that's a memory that sticks with me because it was at a big deal, a big event, the release day, and it was one of my first major victories over anyone, much less them, you know. So it was a really cool moment. But here's the thing. The other guy I mentioned became something of a rival to me, but the way we really clicked, pun intended, is as a team. We started doing team matches. And he and I never lost. And we played for several months at least, and never lost a match when we teamed up. Mostly because we were two of the top three players. And the third person, when he showed up, which was very rarely, if he teamed up with anybody, they were such low quality that he couldn't carry them against us. Like, the gap between position 3 and position 4 was pretty fucking big. You know? Like, the third best player was leagues ahead of the fourth best player. And I would probably say that I was the second best player out of us. I wasn't the first, but that's up for debate. I could have been the third. I know I wasn't the first, but I'm pretty sure I was the second. Anyway, I didn't really come into my own until my friend went to team up with another guy who used to game there playing Mage Knight to make their own gaming store, which was open for years. It finally closed, I think. But I used to go up there and game after Emerald City and all that. And once they left, there was a power vacuum. Because all the heavy hitters left. Because he took himself and his friend, who were two of our top clicks guys. Dugout stopped coming because the competition had literally dried up. And the other big guy played Mage Knight, not HeroClix, so he wasn't there. Which was the point where suddenly, void of these super predators, I was able to find my niche as a gamer and increase by leaps and bounds. I just got so much better. Like, I learned tactics, I got some cheap tricks, I was able to slowly and methodically expand my collection with some very calculated trades, which led to the infamous hooker bomb that I pioneered in our area. I won't say I was the first person in the country to do it, but I was the first person in my county to do it. Which basically I figured out early on, due to someone going to a convention and coming home with a single booster of Explosion, the new Marvel set, which is the first Marvel set to incorporate the DC powers. Because for a while, Marvel had its powers, DC had its. There was some crossover, but like, DC didn't have Invulnerability, Marvel didn't have Impervious, that kind of thing. Like, DC didn't have the gray powers, Marvel didn't have the brown powers, etc. Well, Explosion was the first one to say, you know what, no, Marvel gets all the powers and so does DC. And the con artist we called the street hooker, because look at that sculpt, that's a hooker. had Perplex. She had to push into it, but no one... Perplex was still a new power, and it only appeared on a couple figures up until that point. Harley Quinn and Riddler come to mind. And they weren't really viable to run more than one or two. So it was kind of a novelty that you could get a little bit of a buff here and there. Well, when I basically took over as one of our major players, I upped our point values from 300 to 700. And with most of them being kids, they wanted to play the bigger games anyway. And the con artists on top of that were like a third the cost of Harley Quinn. You could field 3 con artists for one Harley or Riddler. And I quickly figured out how to exploit that by using Pulse Wave to put them all on Perplex and then just have 11 Perplexes to play with. For those that don't know, Perplex allowed you to increase or decrease any one stat, including range, by 1 point per Perplex. The only caveat being they had to be within 10 squares and you had to be able to draw a line of sight. Which meant I just stuck Spidey up on top of elevated terrain, had them all look at him, and go to town, you know. And that led to Spider-Man having like a 10 range and 11 damage kind of bullshit. Not at the same time. But it got to the point where when I finally showed up to game with my old friend, he couldn't keep up with me anymore. I had surpassed him. He basically got complacent, and I didn't. And I no longer had them to basically beat me down into my little hole in the ground, you know. The whack-a-mole game was over. I was able to poke my head up. And I keep in mind, I know I worded that confrontationally. I don't accuse them of purposely stunting me as a player. I don't think they did it on purpose. I don't think they would do it on purpose. And I don't think they did that. But I mean, their presence... you can only have one winner in a game, and it wasn't me when they were around. And once I had the opportunity to start winning and seeing how to win, it just kind of steamrolled, you know? So, I was able to hang in there until Critical Mass, which was going to be the 4th Marvel set. Right before it released, my mother had a heart attack, and we stopped going. And we just never went back. And years went by, and we moved out of that apartment complex into the trailer park where I spent... close to 10 years, probably. It was a chunk of my life, like a third of my life, probably, in that trailer park. I say trailer park. That gives it a trashy thing. It was an not assisted living, it was a retirement park. With trailers, you know, so it was a very classy trailer park. Anyway, I am hyper, so I get on my bike and I ride around the neighborhood at night when the sun's down and it's cool and all that. And I would often ride past this little plaza and I'd see Spider-Man in this window, like a life-size Spider-Man statue just sitting in the window. And I'd ride my bike by on the sidewalk and look in, and like there's this big mural of the Batcave in the back, and it's like a comic store. And every morning, that was one of 2 stores that always caught my eye, or caught my attention. The other one being a bakery that would have its door open, like it smells cinnamon rolls in the morning, you know, and that just... I never went to that bakery either. I wonder if it's still there. It doesn't really matter. I'm not really much of a fresh baked goods kind of guy, honestly. I like my baked goods cold. I'm just weird that way. But anyway, I happened to see this place, and I'm like, you know, one of these days, I'm going to go in there, and I did. And I only poked my head in for a couple minutes, just... It had that... If you've never walked into an unfamiliar comic store, there is a certain sense of hostility, and it's not there. I'm going to tell you that. It's not there. Maybe I'm just paranoid about it, but you sense that, like, oh, I don't belong here, they're looking at me, you know. And really, that's not the thing, especially at this store. They're very friendly people, they're very welcoming, they're chill, they don't care who you are, you're welcome there. But when you first walk into a new comic store, there is that sense in the back of your head that you're not you're out of your territory. You have stepped into rival space. So I didn't stick around long. I just happened to, poke around. I wanted to see what they were all about. And I told them, hey, I've been looking at this store for the better part of a year. I kind of want to know what's up, And they're like, okay, cool, look around. And they had gaming stuff, and I think I saw something about HeroClix. But I just kind of brushed it off because I'd been out of the loop for so long. I think I had recently found HeroClix online, not the official one, which came years later, but this was the unofficial one that someone had made, and kind of experiment a little bit, learned some new things, but for the most part, it was just kind of over my head kind of thing. But I went in for a little bit. I left. Nothing really happened. And then one day I came in, and they happened to be playing a game. And I look over, and sure enough, it's HeroClix. And I mention, oh, I haven't played anything since Critical Mass. Like, oh, you still got your figs? I'm like, yeah, but it's old stuff. Like, we don't care. So I came in, I played, and it was cool. And they mentioned, oh, we got a tournament Sunday. And back then, I was doing pay-per-views on Sunday. Although I don't know if there was a pay-per-view that particular week, because there's only one a month. And I mentioned, well, I'm broke, because that's what kept me out of tournaments back at Emerald City. And like, oh, we don't charge for tournaments unless it's a draft. And the current set at the time, Crisis, had been sold out, so there were no drafts. So I show up, and it was floor, meaning you had to have a certain amount of figures from the new set. So the judge let me pick figures out. And I happened to mention, hey, is there any chance, I don't remember what brought it up. Actually, I do remember what brought it up. Is I had, and I can't even tell you the team. Rookie Robin, the Dick Grayson Robin. Vet Robin, the Tim Drake Robin, the one that replaced my Batman. Experienced Batgirl, Cassandra Cain. Unique Dr. Savannah, and a Lois Lane Pog. And the thing was, I actually came in pretty well and got a figure. But I fought the judge in round 2, and he had Casey's Superman, Kingdom Come Superman. There were 2 Chase Supermen. One was Earth 2, one was Kingdom Come. And Kingdom Come Superman was the big one. He could dual-wield items, and he could charge flurry. And so he's basically hitting you for like 14 clicks a turn. If he hits you, you are dead. And I beat him with a finesse team. Basically, it came down to me having Robin and possibly Batgirl. And he kept missing a lot of things and crit missing, and I just gradually whittled him down and took him out. And his only other figure was Marvel Girl from Monsters and Mutations. Or was it Mutations and Monsters? One of the two. M&M. And so she could not stand against Robin, so he just forfeited. And he basically said, you know what? Because you beat me, because you beat that Superman with that team, something I should not have done, I'm going to let you have those 4 figures. I think he let me keep the Pog, too. So next week I come back in for the next tournament, and I basically run the same team, because I happen to mention, or I happen to ask, like, how much are boosters? And it occurred to him that I only had those figures. So he basically hooked me up with a complete common, uncommon, rare set. Minus like 4 figures. They weren't big deal figures, you know. No super rares, but every common, every uncommon, and all but 4 of the rares, including Darkseid. Oh boy. And so I had some shit from Crisis. And the best part is, I ended up winning every Crisis LE, which was the Teen Titans, which I was playing at the time. So I had Wally West Kid Flash, I had Donna Troy Wonder Girl, I had Garth Aqualad, I had Roy Harper Speedy, and I had Boy Wonder Jason Todd, or Jason Todd Boy Wonder, which was the name of the figure, was Boy Wonder. So I basically had Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, and Tim Drake. I had all 3 Robins, rookie, experience, and veteran. It was great. And that's what got me back down the rabbit hole, is when Secret Invasion came out, the Bush stimulus hit. So I bought myself a brick of Secret Invasion. I also bought the Fantastic Four starter set because it was so good. Because you do not know how pumped nerds can get when you're at a comic store gaming and the guy at the counter is like, oh, look, they put the previews up, and we're all going over them together. It was so cool. And I really missed this place. It was called Comics and Critters 2. And it closed because one of the other owners basically took her money out of it and fucked them so they could not stay open. But when Comics and Critters was open, they, one of the particular clerks would stay all night. Like, I had nights, because they closed at 11, I had nights where I left that store at 4 in the morning. It was fucking awesome. And it wasn't just because we were gaming. Sometimes I'd just hang out and talk with him for 3 fucking hours. And one time, and this is where I really met Skinner, we did a fucking preview of 4th edition D&D. And we went through the whole thing. It was like 7 hours of gaming, and it was fucking awesome. Get down, Willow. Stop. None of that. I've got to plug in the controller real quick. But anyway, then they had Arkham Asylum, which had an interesting little kerfuffle. I had started doing Cha-Cha at the time. Not the dance. It was an internet search company kind of thing where you just text a question, and Cha-Cha answers it. Well, I was one of the answerers. And I had basically gotten my card, but I couldn't withdraw my money. I had like $140 in the bank coming to me within the next day or two because they hadn't sent my PIN number to me. And I basically told them, hey, I have the money for this booster, you know, if you'll spot me. I promise I'm good for it. You know I'm up here all the time. You know, so I worked out something. Well, the judge had gone to another store to get the boosters because our store hadn't gotten ours yet and we wanted to hold the tournament. He had been under the impression that I was going to use his boosters, not that I was buying them, and I pulled the 2 rarest super rares that weren't a chase, which was Superboy Prime, or Superman Prime as they called him, and Metatron. And I played with the Superboy Prime, and he basically said, okay, here's what I'll do. If you can get the money for one of the boosters, which I called my aunt, she brought it up, I'll let you keep 1 booster worth of stuff, I get the other one. He let me pick. I went with Metatron because Superboy Prime had fucking failed me. Basically, this was a Batman themed set that was full of outwit, and if you outwit Superboy Prime, he's garbage. And that's exactly what happened. Basically, the 2 ways to shut down Superboy Prime was outwit his powers or be in stealth, and Arkham Asylum was both of those things. So he'd have been a powerhouse in any other set, and he was absolute garbage tier in this one. Which later on in the Batman set, Big Barda would come out, where she would be a powerhouse in her own set, but as soon as you brought her into the mainstream where outwit was plentiful, she collapsed, just like Superboy Prime. Because we tried to tell one of our friends this. He was like, oh, Barda's so meta. We're like, no, she's really not. But, yeah. But it went well enough. And then there was, we moved stores briefly for Hammer of Thor. That didn't work out. Then we went to a place called Arena, I believe. And we were there for years, and then something went wrong, and that's when we found Books. Books at Park Place, where we gamed for... That was the last store we had. Actually, before Books, I had a brief stint as our judge at a place called... I honestly don't remember anymore. I know it was baseball themed, but I don't remember what it's called. And that fell apart because the owner had a nervous breakdown and sold the place. But then we got to Books, and Books was everything that Critters used to be. You know, it was really the perfect place to game. And so here's the tell-all part where I'm going to go over my honest opinions of my fellow gamers from books. I'm going to start off with our judge, who I always call the judge. And he's one of those where he's really good, but a lot of his skill comes from lucky rolls and a good collection. And I'm not gonna try and take away from the fact that he is legitimately good, but he's not as good as his dice. You know, if he had average die rolls and had the same collection that the rest of us have, he would be a couple tiers lower than he is. The problem is, he was a flake, and kind of unable to comprehend opinions other than his own. It was a failing he had. Then we're going to move to the guy that I used to call Batman, which he knows who he is, and he would really be flattered by that. He was one of our really good players as long as he kept his cool. Problem is, he had a bit of a temper, and if you could trigger that temper, and I was a master at doing that, his gameplay collapsed. Just completely folded like origami. But on those rare moments where he was 100% on his game and you could not rattle him, you couldn't beat him. He was that good. The thing was, as long as his dice didn't crap out on him, yeah, because once his dice went, his temper went right after. Then we had Skinner. Skinner was one of those people that I taught, and I was really proud of him because he listened. And in his very first game, he actually beat me because I told him what a figure's strengths were, and he actually used those strengths. He was the only person who did that. Anubis. Anubis was... and long-time viewers of this channel know who he is. He did co-commentary with me on Resident Evil 4. And I think he was in a couple other things. Anubis was better than he ever knew. Honestly. I often told him that the reason he sucks against us is because he was actively competing with some of the best players in the country. And having been in that situation myself, back in my early days in Emerald City, of playing with really good people, it's very easy to not realize your own potential. And this was showcased when we went to another venue with only a couple of us along, and he absolutely cleaned house, only ever losing to us in the core group. Like, they couldn't touch him. And one time he placed second above the rest of us. Like, he was the highest of our group, minus someone who consistently placed in the top 3 at Worlds anyway. You know, and I told him, I'm like, dude, I've been telling you for years, you're better than you know. You only look like a crap player because of who you're standing next to. And I've told you, if you ever went to another venue, you'd clean house, and you proved it. And we were both, me and the girl who drove with us, she was driving us, we were both very proud of him. He kicked ass, you know. We played horribly. I played worst of all, but it made up for it, but just how proud of him we were. Segueing into the girl who used to drive us, she was an exceptionally good player, not quite top tier in our group, but the problem is she demoralized very easily, and just like with Batman, once that morale went, everything else went with it. Like, if you could get her in that downward spiral, she couldn't recover by the end of the tournament. And she just took herself out. And it was a shame, because she could have won a lot more than she did. It's just... I mean, I've had games, and I've had gaming sessions where I've had that happen to me, so I know what it's like. And I don't have time to cover everyone. I thought I would. I spent a lot of time on those early stories. We're going to talk about the one guy that I did not like. We barely could coexist in the same room. And I'm just going to call him the lawyer, because he was studying for law school. And I honestly wish him well, and I hope he did well. I hope he completed his degree, and I hope he's very successful. But the problem with him is, while he was a very good player, he was not a good player. Now, when I say good player versus good player, the good player part, the first part, is he was exceptionally skilled, and he could whoop your ass. And he had a good collection, decent luck, and sound tactics. The problem was, he was a sore loser and a sore winner. If you beat him, he would bitch. If he beat you, he would bitch. And nothing made him happy. He was this black hole, this soulless void for joy. Like, success only seemed to make him angrier. I don't mean angry like in the Batman sense where he would just... Ah! I mean just completely hitting the fuck it button, done with the world, it's just beneath me kind of thing. And it really was not fun to play against at all. I just couldn't stand it. And I couldn't stand his attitude. And our judge was literally the only person who could stand him. Because he's just weird. Like one of our other players, we're going to call him P2, literally, after playing him once, he had a match with me. He's like, is it just me or do you want to punch him in the face? I'm like, oh, so badly. But we'd be screwed because he's a lawyer. But yeah, P2 was one of my favorite people to play because he was the guy who beat Anubis at that tournament, who took first. Like, he didn't play Anubis, but he took first in that tournament, and Anubis had second. No, actually, at that one, someone else took first, and he took, like, fourth. Because it actually was he placed better out of our whole group. But anyway, P2 is legitimately top tier. Like, he goes to Worlds and is in the top 3 consistently. And I've got about a 60-40 against him in our tournaments. The problem is I don't play the 300-point meta very well. And most of our tournaments are like 500 and up, which is where I excel. So, not to say he's bad at them, I'm just really good at them. So, in a 300-point match, he'd beat me fucking 9 times out of 10. But in everything else, I beat him 6 out of 10, usually. But he's very intelligent. He's got really scummy tactics. And I mean that in a complimentary way, where he will do something and you just want to slap the shit out of him at the table for having the audacity to be that good. You know what I mean? And it's fun to play with him just to see what kind of bullshit he's going to pull this time. And his dad, P1, is he's not fun to trade with. He's one of those people who will get every fucking penny out of a trade for value. But outside of that arena, he's a really cool guy. He's legitimately good. He's kind of in the Anubis camp where he's not as good around us as he actually is. Like, he tends to place highly, but not as highly as he otherwise would. And I have like an 80-20 against him. Like, I'll win 8 out of 10 matches. But those 2 matches that he beats me, he fucking annihilates me. When he has my number, he has my number. You know? And, honestly, well, some of them drive me nuts, the judge, most of all. I do miss the camaraderie of it. I miss the gaming. I miss the intellectual stimulation of it. But the problem is all of the headaches that came along with it, and there were many, and it wasn't... Some of it was the company, meaning WizKids, not the people. Some of it was the people. Some of it was the effort, because it was a 45-minute bike ride to get up there, only for the judge to show up like 2 hours late, you know. There was a lot of things that made it non-viable. If I could find a good mod of HeroClix for Tabletop Simulator, I'd get back in. But anyway, thanks for indulging my little streak of nostalgia. It was a lot of fun to just open up and talk HeroClix like this. It is a game that has been a part of my life for probably 10, maybe even 15 years. And I do miss it, and I got so much joy from it. And it was a big part of my, I would not be the gamer I am today if not for HeroClix, because it opened me up to how fucking devious I can be. And it taught me just a joy for strategy and tactics that I didn't previously have. And just to show you how into it I got, I tried to get a hold of a copy of The Art of War, hoping I could find something in there that might make me a better player. Turns out it relies a lot on the psychology of your troops, which doesn't work when your troops are little plastic men. But it was the thought that counts. It's shit like, oh, make sure you have the weather and the blessing of the gods, and make sure your troops have high morale. I'm like, this doesn't help me in HeroClix. Anyway, everyone, I hope you have a great week, and I hope I have actual news to tell you next time. Until then, bye-bye, everybody. See you next time.